Hello everyone. Today's video is going to be about assessing the wear on the knee of my milling machine using the scan data, and also I'm going to lay out a game plan of how I think I will proceed to scrape this knee back into shape. Being an inexperienced machine rebuilder, I'm partly doing these videos so I can gather some feedback from people who know more about these things than me, so they can steer me in the right direction if I'm heading into trouble. Also, I just want to point out though that I am away from home. I'm on the road for work this week and the next one, so there won't be any kind of dynamic video of me walking around the machine and stuff like that. It's strictly going to be an analysis of the scan data, and I'm going to show some picture as well, so just be aware of that. And let's get started. Before we jump into the scan data, I just want to do a quick overview of the configuration of the knee on this machine. So let's first look at the picture of the knee. This is the back side, obviously, so this surface here would ride along the column. On one side, we have a standard straight dovetail, and on the other side, we have a double angled gib that is bolted to the surface here. Here are some couple of pictures of the gib itself. The big bolts is what holds the gib into the back of the knee, and these smaller bolts here are actually set screws that set the depth of the knee. And there's a slot here. This is the locking mechanism. If you pull on this handle, it kind of squeezes this down and pushes it to get against the other side of the dovetail. Now, the top of the knee is actually a standard box way configuration, as you can see from this picture here. I'm sorry, this is an older picture, but this is the only one I had that showed kind of how the gibs are arranged. So on this side here, we have a gib for the saddle, and there's actually a second gib here. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a gib that pinches this surface from underneath. Other than that, there are two shafts going between the base of the machine and the knee. So from this picture here, we can see this big shaft here is the elevating screw. I don't expect this shaft to be problematic to align because of the scraping, because the hole on the bottom of the, like on the foot of the machine, is pretty substantial. I tested it, and there's a lot of play to move this shaft back and forth. So even if the knee moves back a couple of thou, it's not going to impact anything. We also have another shaft here, which is the shaft that brings the power feed. So the power feed motor is in the base of the machine here, and through a set of bevel gears, it makes this shaft rotates, and this is what gives power to all the gearbox in the knee. I'm a little bit more worried about this one because it is held rigidly here, and if I show you here from underneath the knee, it goes inside this splined bushing here, and that's what makes the whole knee turn. So I'm a little bit worried about the alignment after all the scraping between that shaft and that bushing. I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there. This shaft is part of a sub-assembly that you can see here from underneath the machine. This whole thing is really only bolted on the bottom of the machine, and there's like two dowel pins that maintain it into place. So if it comes to that, I could remove these dowel pins and move this assembly a little bit and re-dowel it. Or I could apply Tersite on the back of the knee to rebuild the surface if I need to. But that would be a pretty substantial amount of Tersite given the size of the sliding surface on the knee. Okay, so that's it for the general consideration. So now let's get into the general wear assessment. All right, so before I actually start analyzing the data, I'm gonna talk about stuff that I found out before I even scanned the machine. When I took all of this apart, the first thing I noticed was that there is a fair bit of original scraping in this area. It is my understanding that in a boxway configuration, this top surface here is not supposed to be an actual bearing surface. So it would make sense that it is almost not worn. But in all actuality, the machine is so worn, we're going to see on these two side surfaces later, but there's a very big dip in the middle that the center of the saddle started contacting the top of the knee here. But still, there is a fair bit of original scraping here at the front, a little bit at the back. It's more faint, but I could still see it. Then this whole front surface here, including the sides, I can see the original scraping on that. This surface is not, I think they just did that for appearance, because this surface is not used for anything precision related. Other than that, I spotted that there is a fair bit of scoring on both the sliding ways. On the top of the knee, you can see here there's a big score right in the middle. There are some smaller one here on this side. And I also spotted, it's kind of hard, we're going to see it better with the color map later, but there is a big wear mark right in the center here. And this is where the brake of the saddle is. When I got the machine, the saddle was so loose that the brake was cranked all the way down. I actually needed a pry bar to unscrew it. So it would make sense that there's a big wear mark here for that. Other than that, as I said earlier, it looks like there's a gib that rides underneath that surface. I'm not entirely sure how. Like if I need to repair that, there's a big chunk of the machine that's in the way here. I don't know how I could get a straight edge underneath that to repair it if I need to. So that's going to be something that's going to need some thinking if I need to do that. And then on the back of the knee, at this point, there's not much I can tell just from looking at either the data like that or the machine. The only thing I can say is that when I took the machine apart, the whole gib was pretty loose. In fact, the whole knee was so loose that under heavy load, the knee would kind of jump up and down a little bit if there was a cutting motion that would try to lift up the workpiece. And if you remember from the column assessment, most of the wear on the column was kind of on that side. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much it for the stuff I observed. So before I show you the end result of all the geometries that I created and where all the wear is and all of that, I feel like I need to show a little bit of my process of how I created different geometries and how I aligned them to one another and so forth. If you're not interested by that, feel free to skip ahead. I'll add bookmarks in the video. Skip to the next section where I start analyzing the data. But for now, I'll show a little bit of my process to get started and analyze this. So first of all, I need to start creating what we call features. As I said earlier, this top surface here, I think is my best surface. It still has some original scraping. So to me, it's only fair to start creating my geometries on this surface. So I'm going to directly click on the polygonal model and try to extract a plane here. Okay, so you can see I clicked here and it automatically highlighted all the points that the software think belongs to the same plane. So I'm going to accept that. And the very first thing I'm going to do is compare this plane to the data. So let's create a quick color map to see what it looks like. I'm going to just go ahead and change that to something that's more relevant. So let's say +6 minus 0.06 range. That's too big, so 3. Okay. The first thing we can see is that the cover in the center is kind of creating an error in my plane fit. This cover was actually scraped in line with the knee, but when I scanned it, it was not bolted all the way down. This is the cover of the elevating screw. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that from my plane just by cropping the center like so. And now I'm just going to go ahead and re-extract my plane so I get a better fit. Okay, so that's better. I don't know if you could see that, but the data kind of shifted. Now I see that from this plane fit, I have high spots here at the front. It almost looks like scraping. As I said, I can see some scrape mark in that area, so that makes sense. And there is also a little bit of red here at the back. So that's good. This is mostly what I was expecting, a little dip in the middle, and then some original bearing surface in the front and the rear. Okay, so that's my first geometry created. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing on the back of the knee. That's my next important surface, I would say. Okay, so I'm going to click on more points to try to help the software figure out the area I'm trying to fit the points to. All right, so I think I got it down. So now I'm going to generate my geometry here. And I'm just going to add this geometry to my color map so it shows a color scale too. So creating the color map like that really helps me assess if I have a good fit and what's going on. So right now we can see that there is a small dip here in the data and here. Looks like it's high in the top left corner, but also here. This area, it makes sense that it's not worn at all. It's underneath the gib, so it doesn't see any friction from moving back and forth. Now that I have these two features, I can go ahead and measure the angle between these two. Okay. This is my first check to assess the quality of the two surfaces. Now I have 90.0056. I won't bother you with the calculation, but this roughly equates to 1.2 tau every 12 inches. And as per Richard and other information I found, it should be about 8/10, from 5 to 8/10. So this is too big of an angle. Now, I know that the top surface here is most likely fitted properly because there's no wear in the front and in the back. The back of the knee, though, is another story because this guy is heavily worn. As I said, the gib was loose and all kind of things like that. So I think I can't trust it. So I'm going to use this top plane here as my reference. So basically what I'm going to do, I need to rotate this plane in order to get the angle I need. So let me create quickly a line between my two planes. Okay. So that created me a line that's an intersection between the two planes. And the only reason I'm doing that is that now I'm going to rotate plane 2 here, and I'm going to rotate it along the line I just created. A rotation of, and again, I'm not going to bother you with the calculation, but this would need to be around 90.003 to be within spec. So I'm going to go slow, 001, and see what it does. Okay, 4.6, so I'm going to give it 1.5. It's going the right direction. Again, apply. Okay, 0.031. So now, if we look now, we have more red at the bottom. We still have a little bit of red at the top, but the pattern shifted a little bit. Now, but now we know, like if I hide the data, that we have two geometries that are correctly aligned with the data, and also they have the correct relationship between each other. Okay. Now, there is still a degree of freedom that is not fully constrained here. I adjusted the up and down of the back of the knee, but it could still turn left to right. So the main reference that we have here to clock this rotation would be all of these surfaces here on the side. We have they all have a little bit of wear, but I have 4 of them. So I feel like if I average each of these surfaces, it's going to give me a good average, and it should be close enough to the true rotation that this plane needs to have. So I'm just going to quickly go through that. Okay, so I skipped ahead a little bit, just not to bore you too much with the details, but now I've created small planes on these 4 surfaces. Before I do anything else, I will include them in my color map to make sure that the fit are good and that what I'm using as references, it makes sense. So I see that each of the planes, this one here it contacts, this is the gib surface. So it is the dip in the center, but I have high spots on both ends. So I feel like this is an accurate representation of the direction. This here is a little bit worn at the front, but high spot in the rear. And you can see that big dip I was talking about in the braking area. Now the other side, same story, a valley in the center, but high spots on both ends. And this one here looks pretty unworn. So I feel like these fits are good. I can use that as reference. It's pretty consistent. I went ahead and created lines that are intersection between each of these planes and my top plane. And then I created a center line that's right in the middle. It's basically an average line for all of these planes. Okay, so now what I'm going to do with that, I'm just going to start establishing my reference system. So my first reference is my top plane. And then my secondary reference is going to be this line that I created here. Okay, at this point, this is all I need. I'm going to hit that because I'm still not fully defined. Okay, so now let's take a look at what happens if I go in that plane and I force it. Sorry, clicked on the wrong thing. And I force it to be perfectly normal with the coordinate system that I just created. So basically, this is okay, but it shouldn't have any component here in the X. I'm just going to make that a 0. Okay, so now because the whole plane rotated, it got out of the scale of the color map. So, okay, so now let's just go ahead and translate it a little bit so it goes back into scope. Okay, so it's closer. All right, I think I could translate it down a little bit more. So let's say 3 tau. Okay, I think that looks good now. All right, so now what we can see is a completely different story than what we had before. When I just fitted the plane on that surface, it looked like this plane had a decent fit. But when we compare it to the alignment of the rest of the machine, we can see that there's actually a heavy wear on this side. And the end result is that the whole knee was rotated. Now, if you remember, at the beginning of the... Let me just hide for a quick second. I'm just gonna hide that so we can see better. If you remember, at the beginning of the video, I said that the most of the wear on the column was here, right? Well, this makes sense. It also is where there is most of the wear on the knee. And again, one of my initial observation was that the gib was loose. The gib is on this side. So my theory was that the knee was kind of hanging on its dovetail on this side, and most of the wear happened there because the gib was loose. All right, anyhow, so I'm going to show you another project in which I have fine-tuned and messed around with these different features and tweaked them for a long time. This was just like a quick rundown of just to show you the technique that I'm using to do these kind of things. But yeah, so I'm going to show you the end result now. All right, so here is the final result. First of all, let me quickly explain this color scale that I have here. It's a little bit different than the one in the previous shots. This is what I call my scraping color scale, meaning that I've moved all of my geometries to where I want to go. So all of the planes that I created are laying on the lowest spot and in the deepest valleys, basically. So everything that's dark green are the areas that have seen the most wear so far. And I need to remove a lot of material in the higher areas, which are red and orange. This top surface here is what I plan to use as my main reference, since it is almost pristine. There's some original scraping in the front, and it's going to be very easy to scrape. Because of that, moving on, I'm going to go to these side planes. I will make them parallel to this top surface and also coplanar. Once I'm done with that, I will correct the sides. There is not a lot of work to do on the sides. This one is a little bit strange to me. All three sides are balanced in their wear. So you can see here I have yellow on both sides, orange and a little bit of red, but not much on this side. This one here is also balanced with blue on both sides, but this guy is blue on one side and green on the other, meaning that it's rotated compared to the other ones. It is the only surface that do not really contact anything during the function of the machine. There's nothing that ride against this. So I'm wondering maybe it was never scraped in or corrected, because really this surface is useless. It's not used by any other feature on the saddle. But still, it's a little bit worrisome. Because I'm about to do a heavy correction on the rotation of the knee, and these three other bearing surfaces agree with that, but this one here is a little bit unhappy that the whole knee is going to rotate, because I'm going to need to rotate this surface too. So that have me a little bit worried here, because I'm about to take 5 thou in the highest areas, and if I count the gib area, 7 thou, to create a kind of hefty rotation of the back of the knee. To me, all the signs point towards the fact that it's the right move. It's the area that had the most wear on the column. So it only makes sense that the matching area would also be worn on the knee. The three bearing surfaces on the top of the table are also in agreement with the fact that I should rotate the back of the knee. Only this little surface here is not aligned with all of that. So I'll remeasure everything to be sure when I get there, but this is a bit strange to me. Also, I have a bit of a question here, maybe for people listening in. I've read in different places that it might be a good idea to relieve the center portion of the knee because it is such a huge bearing. The surface for reference is about 12 by 20. So if it is true that I should relieve it, how deep of a relief should I create, and how big of an area should it be? There's no mention of it in the Conley book, not that I've seen anyway. I've seen it on forums. Some people seem to agree, some others seem to disagree. So I would like some guidance here. Other than that, just a quick mention too that there is currently a 90.0025 angle between these top surfaces and the back of the knee as I'm about to correct them. That equates to roughly 5/10 over a foot, like suggested by Richard. All right, so if you guys have any comment, question, or guidance, please feel free to post them either in the YouTube or on the forum. And I should start working on that in probably in 2 weeks, so I'll keep you posted with progress. And I just thought about that too, but would be rather easy for me to make this data available. If people are interested, I could post a link to a free version of our software that only allows to review data. So I could post a link to that and also a link to this project so people can download it and take a look at the data for themselves. So let me know if this is something that would be of interest for you. All right, have a good day.